Hello, everyone. Welcome to Just Gaming
Hi.
Tingz Podcast, where we bring you the all-queer perspective on video games, gaming news, and nerdy stuff. My name is Koga Jangles, and with me today we have Jam,
Hello.
we have Ruby,
Hi.
and we also have Spin.
Hello.
Hi,
All right.
friends.
Hey, friends.
Chalora, we miss you.
Yes, we do miss you. We miss you, Chalora.
Chalora. We just scream into the void.
We just scream. I hope she hears us. We don't have Chalora today, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I know.
But we miss her very much.
Very much.
Yes.
This is
Hopefully,
true.
she'll be here with us next week.
Hopefully, I guess you're just gonna have to follow us on Just Gaming Tingz on Twitter and Twitch and YouTube and all the podcast services to find out.
You sure better. Honestly, why would you not?
Right? I'm just saying. Listen,
Really?
we're very close to Twitch affiliate, so if anyone would like to follow us on there, that would be amazing. And yeah, and if you subscribe to us on YouTube, we can get a custom URL very, very soon. So hopefully, we can get that sooner rather than later.
Put that out into the universe.
Yeah, just
It's coming, y'all. It's coming.
manifesting.
We're manifesting.
Yes, we do have
It's
some
coming.
news stories, don't we?
We do.
Maybe a few. Maybe a few.
Maybe.
Maybe. I'm going to go ahead and start us off with our first one. Twitch just removed the blind playthrough tag. So I have a little write-up from Kotaku that I'm going to read for us right now. Blind playthrough was meant to be applied to first-time runs through games, frequently with the implication that streamers didn't want chat spoiling key story elements or trying to backseat game. Streamers and other content creators use the term pretty frequently. Recently, however, Twitch removed the blind playthrough tag following concerns about ableist language. Today, Twitch community and creator marketing director Erin Aurelian Wayne acknowledged the change on Twitter. And her quote is, "Happy to see Twitch has listened to everyone who shared feedback and removed the blind playthrough tag to encourage more inclusive language for our community," she wrote. "You can still use first playthrough or opt to use it in combination with no spoilers for the same sentiment." All right,
Yes.
so
Good
let's go
job,
ahead and talk
Twitch.
about, yeah, look at Twitch doing something.
Yeah.
Listening to the community, who would have thought?
Right?
For once.
Exactly. So let's just start a little conversation about like, what do you think was the the problem with this tag, and do you agree with it being removed? Let's go ahead and start with Jam for this. What do you think?
I would say that I do agree with it being removed, honestly, because like they have a no spoilers tag, they have a first playthrough tag, and this was a way of combining the two of those, right? In essence. And I feel like it wasn't really necessary because you had those two tags there. Most people put that this is my first time playing through the game in their title if it's a game that they don't want spoilers for anyways. And I think I guess the adaptation to making sure we include, inclusive language, right? And so it's just a little weird. So I think that it not being there is good overall for the community because I don't think it's necessary. I don't think you need that to be for people to know that you don't want spoilers, right? And if you have, especially if you have another avenue to deal with this, and if there's a community that's saying like, look, this doesn't really make sense, right? And it's kind of like ableist language, right? Even though we may not see it that way because it's a term we've used for a long time, community and language adapts over time. And as we realize that words don't fit the current, zeitgeist and the way we should be speaking, you can alter it. And with, having what we already have there that people can use, why not? So I don't know. What do you think, Koga?
I think the change is absolutely fine. I wasn't honestly aware that there were those out there who had an issue with it being used that way, because I was a person who did use the tag, because of course you have first playthrough and things like that, but it's another tag to just have yourself at. So I wasn't even aware that people weren't happy about that until this article. So my opinion of it is, I think it's 100% fine. There's other options that you have that you can use. So hey, Twitch did something, I think, that was good. They listened to a community who had an issue with it. They made a change, and you can use another one. Like, so you can use first playthrough or anything like that, and it'll mean the same thing. So I think it's good. I think it's really good.
Yeah, you can pair up the tags up to 5 tags. So for people who are not into Twitch or anything of the sort, basically every time you go live, you can set up a title, a category, and then there's a tag system where you can label yourself as or your content as LGBTQIA+. You can use first playthrough, no spoilers, no backseating, multiplayer, single player. Depending on what you're doing, you can basically identify your content within those tags. So you can easily pair up first playthrough with no spoilers and no backseating, and still have room to use the LGBTQIA+ tag, and even like retro or something. So it really it's a non-issue to me. I recently became aware of the issues that the disabled folks have about the usage of blind playthrough and stuff along those lines. So I just easily traded it out with first playthrough. I always thought it was silly having both there to begin with. I was like, I understand it can be if it's your first playthrough, maybe you've seen already someone else play it, so you're not necessarily, maybe you already know some of the spoilers, or maybe some of the things out there. But I also don't think people will immediately jump to the conclusion that everything just from seeing first playthrough. You know what I mean? When I go into a stream and they say first playthrough, I'm not going to assume that they've watched someone else play it or that they did all of that. I'll leave that for the streamer to mention or to say or whatever it is. So yeah, I don't find an issue with it at all. I definitely think it's a step in the right direction far as Twitch listening to communities and doing the right thing by them. And hopefully this continues on to, the upcoming weeks and months as we get into 2021 and more wonderful changes take place in the platform. What do you think, Sabine?
I think, okay, first of all, I think the blind playthrough tag is kind of redundant, because you do have the first playthrough tag and it's essentially the same thing.
Right.
So there's really no need for it, one. And two, people don't think about the implications of a lot of the language that they use, because there are so many terms that are just used in everyday language and on Twitch and in gaming specifically that are rooted in ableism.
Yeah.
And people don't really think about that. They're blind playthrough, turn a deaf ear. It's these are common expressions, yes, but just it's important to take a minute to kind of think about what you're actually saying. If you're saying something that is implying something bad about a group of people, is that something you really mean, or do you mean something else?
Yeah.
So I definitely wanted to kind of talk a bit about this is a great change, and I'm really excited that Twitch listened and is making changes like this. But I think it's kind of a first step for a lot of people to kind of encourage them to think about the language that they use in their everyday life. So what if we want to kind of go through everybody again, what do you think about that? Are there any other common terms, or specifically gaming terms?
I don't mind going first when it
Yeah.
comes to this
Yeah,
because
go
I
ahead.
actually well, not that recently, but I've been trying over the past few weeks to because I was actually watching a friend of mine, Urban Bohemian, while he was streaming on Twitch. And in one of his timers on his bot, there was actually this link that had to do with like, and the message said something to the effect of like, did you know that a lot of terms we use are rooted within like ableism and stuff like that, and maybe we should avoid them? And here are some like suggestions, and here are some terms that maybe we could avoid and stuff like that. So I learned a lot, and it's interesting because it's like what Spin said. A lot of this is like we subconsciously know that they're wrong, but we also tell ourselves like, oh, that's not what I mean. Like that's obviously not what I mean. But
Yeah.
it led me to believe like maybe we should just mean what we say, and say what we mean. And so I've been trying to avoid terms that you can hear and read all the time in games like stupid and dumb, lame, insane, crazy, like stuff like that that is rooted within like obviously different types of ableism, but still I was like, I never thought about it that way. And now that I'm thinking about it, since I'm like obviously we're a queer friendly like show and people obviously, um it to me it opened my eyes to the idea of okay, maybe if I want people in the queer community to feel included and to feel safe, I should also want to make other people who may have certain disabilities or certain conditions also feel included and safe in my community by, if I see it in a game, I either jokingly or seriously like censor it or offer, like if a character says something ableist, I'm like, oh, did you mean wild? Did you mean annoying? Like I try to like put that within the commentary so that people kind of don't, because obviously I don't know every single dialogue that's going to happen in a game. So that's kind of how I try to go about it, as far as like not necessarily censor, but try to change it a little bit, being like, hey, maybe we don't want to say this, or maybe we don't want to say that because you're a good person or you have good intentions, I'm assuming. So maybe let's try to do a little bit better. And that's something that we all make those errors and we all make those mistakes, and it's definitely not a thing of like, oh, you said that word, you are terrible and you must forever be abolished from the internet. Like that's not at all the idea here. But yeah, do y'all have any other instances or any situations like that?
I think for me, I think the biggest thing is utilizing things like stupid and crazy and insane. I think those are some of the biggest ones for me because they're typically used to refer to people who are dealing with difficulties either mentally or whatever the case may be, and it's used to demean them. And it's something that like I said earlier, like language is something that actually does evolve, and a lot of people don't like to treat it that way. They treat it like language is a stagnant thing, like it hasn't changed over time. And as language changes, we should change with it. And the thing is within the LGBT community, within POC communities, we have done that exact same thing with language surrounding ourselves, right? So now it's just taking a look at another community and saying, okay, what words am I using that affect them negatively or that they don't want used? And say, okay, how can I replace this word in my everyday language? And there's nothing wrong with being willing to admit that you've either made a mistake or said something wrong, but being willing to learn is the biggest thing. And some people just aren't. They just want to be defensive and say, well, this is a word I've used for a long time and it doesn't mean that. And realizing now that like there is an evolving language that we're a part of, and we need to accept that and evolve with the language. And it's everything is the world is intersectional. Like there's not one person who exists in, not everyone exists in one group, and we have to pay attention to these things. So it's just very, I don't know. I'm glad that they're doing this, but I think those would be the things I've tried to replace in my everyday vernacular pretty intensely because it's something that I used all the time, especially when I was younger. And now I'm like in my 30s and I'm like, that was ridiculous. I don't know why I did that. Right.
I still catch myself being like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, I do not want to say that. I didn't mean that." Like, but it's important having that awareness, right? What do you
Yeah.
think,
I
Koga?
think I think it's that you have to always keep your ears open of how people feel about these type of things, because a lot of words are said and you mean something, but because another group, it negatively impacts them and they may not feel that way. So you have to be willing to listen to them and not just you know get very defensive or upset about it. Just sit and try to understand where it is they're coming from. And that does means that there's going to be a lot of changes that come along the way that we all have to do not we're not all perfect. And I'm pretty sure I've probably said quite a few of those words a lot, and it's just you have to be willing to try to change that and to be a better person for those people. So but the thing is, it can be hard to know what those words can be. So I say if you're not sure, ask a few people who may, or just keep your ears open and listen to what those people have to say. Because one of the things about us today compared to like early 2000s and the 90s is, with the internet we are more connected than we ever were back then. And that means that those people now have the ability to have a voice and say something. So because it was okay in the 90s, could have been more so because no one really knew, because that we weren't able to hear that. Like I grew up, we were in a neighborhood. The only people you were really able to hear were the people on the street and in school, but not the rest of the world around you.
Right.
So now that we have that, let's use that, to gain more knowledge about things like this.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's true.
I wanted to go ahead and like chip in my thoughts, like as somebody who lives with like mental illness and physical illness. I've been trying to kind of correct my vocabulary from some of these things too recently, and it just kind of brought into my mind like how subconsciously I was affected by the common use of words like this, especially like things like crazy or lame. Like I didn't necessarily realize how much that subconsciously affected me my until my disabilities got to the point where like they were disabling, which was pretty recently. And I was just kind of finding myself kind of coping with, okay, now I am disabled. Like now I am this, now this is me. This is my new reality. And the words that are commonly used did like I can definitely pinpoint did have like a subconscious negative effect on how I perceived myself. And I can assume for like a lot of other people living with mental illness or with disability that's the same way. And I feel like this whole year and this like whole journey for me has kind of been about recognizing the internalized ableism within myself and confronting that. And I think part of it has definitely been like looking at my vocabulary and looking about like the negative implications that has for the negative connotations that has for me and for people like me. So that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah. And our brains are like sponges. Like we say stuff like that to ourselves, about ourselves, so often. Like when we're playing a game and we do something wrong in the heat of the moment, you're like, oh, I am so insert ableist word here. And your brain, like, it doesn't matter if you say it as a joke, if you didn't mean it, if you were angry or whatever, like your brain will attach to that stuff and you subconsciously will like suck all of that into yourself and be like, oh wow, like I didn't realize what kind of like garbage I was like accumulating within myself from just like saying these things, hearing these things. And another thing that I wanted to add before we get into our next story is that this is not meant to be like, oh, we're telling you what to say or telling you how to speak or telling you what to do with your life. the idea behind this conversation is to raise awareness to these issues, and for us and people that listen to this or watch this to hopefully reflect a little bit, as we have and as we currently do reflect on it. And it's just one of those things that if you choose to continue like speaking that way, or if you choose to continue doing stuff like that, then one, don't be surprised if, you know, maybe some people in your life stop hanging out with you because they don't want to hear that kind of language around you. Or if someone ends up calling you out or criticizing your word choices for whatever it is that you're doing. And, you know, and because I think obviously it's not cute to go around and like yelling at people like, oh, you shouldn't have said this, you shouldn't have said that. But at the same time, it's also like, you know, nobody's trying to tell you how to speak. It's just more like, hey, let's be a little bit more conscious about everyone else around us and be a little bit more careful and be a little bit more inclusive to people. And, you know, don't be surprised, like, if you don't act inclusive or if you don't act in a way that is safe for people, then don't be surprised if they walk away from you, if they turn around and they're like, yeah, maybe this isn't the space for me. But
yeah. It's not like we're not here just being like, if you say the X, Y, and Z, you are automatically canceled and never redeemable again. Like,
right.
It's more just like kind of think about the implications of the words that you're saying.
Yeah.
That's kind of the thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, we can get into kind of a bit of a lighter topic.
Yeah.
With Koga. You want to go ahead and take it away?
Sure. All right. So we have a write-up from Kotaku about Zelda Phillips CD-i games receiving a fan recreations for PC. All right. So we had Faces of Evil and Wands of Gamelon were the first two of 3 Zelda games Nintendo published on the ill-fated Philips CDI system in the early 90s. They are very bad, so bad Nintendo doesn't recognize them as series canon. Keep it that way. But they still got a certain charm to them. And so this fan effort to rebuild them from the ground up on PCs is pretty neat. Rather than remaster them, Dobley has fired up Game Maker and completely remade them, in the process saying he has definitely improved them in his humble opinions, with stuff like new controls, a smoother frame rate, over the course of 4 years and part-time development.
Oh my.
I've actually never played the originals. I'm probably going to keep it that way unless I just want to go back and laugh at them, which...
Don't do it.
You know, now I kind of want to. Oh my goodness.
Don't do it.
But I think that is cool that this has been done. I do also want to note that they have taken this down off of their website because they don't want Nintendo going in on them, because that's what Nintendo does.
Right.
So you can find it. You just would have to do that yourself, because they took that down, like, I think within maybe 2 days or so.
Nintendo. Why?
Yeah, I don't know why they would want to take this down. I mean, no one's gonna. I don't know, but
what do you think it be released originally? So,
right. Listen, they tried something and it didn't succeed, and now they don't trust anybody with their properties, and now it's just Nintendo does Nintendo and nobody else can do it, and they're overly possessive of their stuff.
Yeah, but I mean, despite the history with these games, with this new and improved versions, do any of you think that you would be willing to give that a try at all? I'll just start with you, Ruby.
Ooh, the only things that I know about these games is how cursed they are and how silly they are, and how, like, I've just seen people like making fun of them on the internet and using them as examples for like bad animations or bad spin-offs or stuff like that. So I definitely have zero intentions on delving into that. I do think it's a cool idea to take a game that may have potential, but it was executed questionably and for them to be like, you know, I'm a fan of this and I see the potential here, so let me remake this entirely. It's interesting to me that Nintendo took it down, it makes me almost think that they have some sort of interest in doing their own. But it's weird because like they didn't recognize this as like canon, and they just are like, we don't look at that. That didn't happen, so don't think about it. So I don't know, but I would give it a shot, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, actually, it wasn't Nintendo who took it down. The people who made it, they took it off their website because they just didn't want Nintendo coming after them.
Oh,
I mean, Nintendo probably would have knowing them, but they were like, "We're just gonna stop while we're ahead." So
yeah, good idea. Yeah. So okay, Nintendo didn't do it. So maybe everybody sorry for getting your hopes up if you're expecting a Nintendo made version of the starting a conspiracy, right. Yeah, I don't know, I would have to watch like a trailer first or something like that and see how improved they are, because you can say that it's new and improved and then it not being that great regardless. But yeah, that's all I know about these. What do you think, Spin?
Yeah, I've personally never played these games, but I've seen a lot of cursed clips and images from the cutscenes, especially.
Right.
And just the thing about it is, on the surface, the idea of like a point and click Zelda game is interesting. Like it could be a thing, but like. I don't know, because like if you remake the game completely, like are you also redoing the voice acting, all your like, which is also extremely
which was
cursed.
Also I was gonna say
exactly. Yeah, I would hope Nintendo wouldn't get on them about this, because like this is obviously taking like a lot of dedication for this like one person over 4 years to remake these games.
Right.
And it's not like Nintendo. Nintendo is just like, oh, don't talk about it. It's not real. And then I would hope they wouldn't then step in and be like, no, you can't do that. But it is Nintendo.
Yeah. Wouldn't be necessarily shocking if this article was about them taking it down.
Right.
And like suing them or something wild like that.
Right. What do you think, Jam?
These are like the most cursed version of Zelda to ever exist. Like
cursed content, peak cursed content.
I remember when like I first started seeing like the clips of this on the internet, and I was just like, who made this like terrible cartoon of Zelda? And then I realized that it wasn't a cartoon, it was a game that someone had made at a point in time.
Right.
And I was like, what? And then I was like, why?
Right.
Why would you allow this to happen? And then just thinking like, now the way that I know Nintendo and their iron, grasp that they have on everything ever, I'm always like, you let this happen.
Why did you let this happen?
You did this. Like, I know that you had a right over this. Like, you licensed it to them, but you got to see it, and you still let them release it.
Right.
But I'm interested to see, because, like, the voice acting was bad, the animation was bad, but I feel like it had some interesting music, and it was an interesting premise. So why not let it exist in like a new form? And maybe someone, when they fixed all of the things that people hated, which were mainly the controls and the animation of the game, if you fix that, maybe it might be a good game, right? Like, so, I'm about it. Why not? I love Zelda, so, I'm down to play it. I will never touch this cursed content, but I'll try the new version, and if it's just as cursed, I'll throw my computer out the window.
So when's your car?
You gotta get rid of the whole thing.
Right.
Just get a new one. walk in and say, "Hey, for some reason I was playing this game and my computer exploded. Can you replace it, please?"
So weird.
Oh no.
So weird.
Oh no.
Coco, what do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to, I might try them. I never played the originals because it just looked bad. It didn't look like it would be fun to play. It was like if I was to play that or stream it, it'd be something to like laugh and poke fun at.
Right.
But for the
I
new
think
one,
the controls are worse than like all of the early 3D platformer controls.
Oh no. That is
Yeah,
really
don't do
bad.
it.
That is really
Like,
bad.
don't do it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Don't. Love
Oh,
yourself. Don't play it.
Yeah, love yourself. Don't do it. The new one though, try that.
I might try the new ones. We'll see. But I just want to see like exactly what they did and how it feels. Well, I can't compare it to the other ones. I never played it, but if they've made it to where it's enjoyable, then that's a good thing. But Nintendo's definitely ain't gonna be probably cool with that because no one gave them money for it, and Nintendo likes money. And
Yeah.
no fun allowed unless there's money involved. So
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Do y'all think there would be like other games, older games that you would like to see getting like remastered or remade in this way? Maybe in an official way, so we don't have to like, go incognito online and try to find everything in like shady websites.
Yeah, fair.
I'm in.
Right. You just hear the keyboard.
Exactly. I actually had a thought about this.
Oh, let's
This
hear
is gonna.
it. Your
this is gonna
laugh
sound
is
completely
concerning me a
out of
little bit.
This is gonna sound completely out of left field, but there was this PC game on like Windows 95 or something that I was absolutely addicted to as a kid. It was called Flux. It was a puzzle game. I don't know if anybody else but me played this.
Yep.
Jam, you did? Okay. I went on like a Google deep dive to search for this game as an adult because like it's not available in an official capacity anymore.
Oh no.
Basically, and like I know you're like, Spin, it's just like a match 3 puzzle game. What's so special about it? But listen, it was. The soundtrack is like peak 90s techno goodness. The soundtrack is incredible. It's I know it's weird to talk about the graphics in a puzzle game, but just the textures of the tiles are really interesting. Like there's interesting like backgrounds. There's explosion graphics when you do a match. It's very satisfying.
Okay.
So like child me was absolutely living for this game. And as an adult, I just went on a Google deep dive to try to find it. Found absolutely nothing until I came up with there is like a fan-made website where you can play the game in a browser. But it's not perfect. Like it's not the same. So I would absolutely love an official or even a fan-made version of this game that I could just play on my computer and just like live my like childhood Windows 95 life and just like bop out to the techno and like do some matches and make things explode. Like that was my entire jam.
Oh.
It was fun.
Yeah.
Like in all honesty, for a matching game, loved it. Couldn't stop.
Yeah.
My mom was like,
yeah,
game down, do anything else in your life. Anything else.
I'm so glad that at least like Jim, you know what I'm talking about. Because I was worried that I was gonna come on here and be like gushing over a match 3 puzzle game, and y'all were gonna be like, "What?"
I mean, you still are,
like,
but
you could just play Candy Crush, you know.
Oh, not Candy Crush.
It's not the same.
It's a terrible. and no one should play it.
Oh.
Candy Crush is terrible.
Oh.
But yeah, if y'all need some jams, if y'all want to just like turn up your music and have a solo dance party, so a quarantine safe dance party, just like put on the soundtrack of Flux from the Windows 95, and
All right.
it is a moment. It's an entire moment. Do any of y'all have any other games that you might think of?
Oof. There were some games from the early 2000s, I would say, or like mid 2000s, that were like on the Disney Channel website that you could play. Like there were like a couple Kim Possible games where you had to like stack like sandwiches or something, and then there were like a lot of those like flash games that were like very entertaining as a kid. That wait, no, the sandwich one was Lilo and Stitch, I think. The Kim Possible one, it was this game where there was like a treadmill of foods, and you were the little rat Rufus, and you just had to like go around, and if it's like if you saw like an ice cream, you had to put like chocolate topping on it, and then if like chips flew by, you had to like put cheese on them. Like, it was just, you know, peak entertainment for the early 2000s children out there. Y'all may know this. I think it would be interesting if there was some sort of like, I know the games are available to play online, because I think the website is either still up or like there's like a fan website where they uploaded everything and you basically get to re-experience all of that again. But other than that, I can't really think of, like, it's interesting because we've gone to this point where a lot of childhood stuff has been kind of remastered and remade. So I can't really think of like anything else. I think, actually, I just thought of something. I think it would be really nice if Sega, for the Sonic anniversary, I think there's like a big anniversary coming up, if they released a good version of Sonic 06, because that game had potential. You had Sonic, you had Shadow, you had Silver. Maybe add more girlies in there, make it like almost like a Sonic Adventure type situation where you can play as Amy. And maybe Rouge, she's also fierce. Put Knuckles in there. His levels weren't that great, but if you make them great, that could be a good time. Some treasure hunting. Put Tails in there. Give him a storyline other than like racing against Sonic. I think that would be cute. Like if we got like the non-official Sonic Adventure 3, aka like Sonic 06, but like a good game, because it's so cursed to the point of like, even me as a Sonic fan, I'm like, I don't want to get any version of this, because I know this is Glitch City and like there's game breaking glitches and bugs that you can't even get through. So I'm like, give me just a good version of that. Give me like, you know, the game that the Sonic fans deserve. Yeah, do y'all have any?
Exactly.
Yeah, I was gonna say Sonic 06 as well, because that was not what I saw in the first trailer. That looked really clean, and like Sonic was just jumping off the walls, then flipping and landing on his feet. That's not what we got. When this game came out, he would just be going in like one direction. It looked like he's about to land head first, and then it's just on his feet when you're just jumping off the walls. It makes no sense. The sense of speed is just not there. Knuckles getting stuck on walls.
No.
Like, I would love. Now I know like in Sonic Generations on PC, there's a mod that you can like replay like some of like the Sonic levels and whatnot in that engine. But I would like for them, to go back and be like, okay, well, how could it have been if they actually had, the time and everything to get that done? I think they didn't have the time to finish it.
Yeah.
And it just came out like a mess. I like the soundtrack though. That's probably what kept me playing that game. It's pretty good. But gameplay wise, it's not. The story doesn't make sense either, because it's time travel and they messed that up.
Oh no. Yeah, I remember random funny story. Like I remember as a kid, PS3 became a thing and I was like, "Okay, cool. Whatever happened to that Sonic game that I heard?" And then I looked on the store. It wasn't on the PlayStation store. I was like, "This is weird." And then I looked online and I realized that they only had like physical copies, but it was very rare and I was like, "I wonder why that is." And then I looked more into it and realized that the game was a disaster. So, younger me, which it was probably not even, this was probably like high school me by this point. I was like, wait, no, '06. I only found about it later. So, yeah, it was probably like late middle school, early high school. And I was like, I was crushed. I was like, you mean to tell me that this game that I thought was going to be the biggest deal for a Sonic fan was actually a disaster? And then I thought, it can't be that bad until eventually Let's Players on YouTube started covering that game. And I was like, oh, that's what they meant. Like, that's how bad it is. I get it. I understand.
Imagine getting that day one. Like it came out on PS3 like a bit later. It got delayed. So I got it day one and I'm just thinking, oh my God, I can't wait. And it gets this the first level and I'm like, this really feels off.
Because
like, Sonic, you're not running fast.
Because they also hyped it up because it was like an anniversary too. So that's why they crunched to get that disaster out when they did. So I think it could be a fun full circle moment if they got it. Even listen, if it means that the game is not going to be good for the anniversary, just announce it at the anniversary and be like, hey, in a few months from now or a couple years from now, there's going to be this really good game that we're not going to rush because we know what happened last time we tried doing that.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That's a tragedy.
It is.
Bad.
Do you have any jam that you can think of that you would like to see?
Honestly, this is gonna be honest, and this is a game that I still like love, and I think, when I played it originally, I thought it was a good game. Like, I just need a full-on remake of Super Mario 64. Like,
yeah, with
good controls, a good camera. Then that game will actually be fun now. Like, as a child, it was fun because it was just like, this is a 3D Mario game. Now, going back and trying to play it, I'm just like, this is terrible, and no one should ever play this because the controls are so bad. But
you're speaking directly to me. I'm here. I'm just.
If they would remake it and fix the controls, honestly, they could leave it in the blocky N64 texture because
that would be cute,
right? Like in Super Mario Odyssey, you could get a skin that made him look like the blocky character from Super Mario 64. I just need to be able to actually control the game in a manner that's playable.
Yeah.
Ruby like you with Tomb Raider.
Thankfully, there's a reboot for that, but yeah.
The amount of times that I have found myself in my playthrough of Mario 64, in my Mario 64 journey, on an impossibly skinny platform with these controls where if you just gently if you just blow on the stick, you slide off into oblivion.
If you breathe on the stick from Mars, you will jump off the platform. I don't get it. Why is it so sensitive? Why does the camera just fly around? I just don't. Who said that was okay?
Now the camera's over here. Now the camera's inside my body. Listen. I want to love that game so bad, and I'm having a good time playing it, but I have to do it in some very, very small doses for my own stability and safety.
Right.
To be fair,
okay.
6, and now we're talking about them re-releasing it like that this year, but in '96.
In 1996, I see it.
Yeah,
they were trying to get used to. That was a really awkward period where we get 3D games, and they were like, really weird, so they had to get used to it.
Valid.
Jam, stop shaking your head. Stop that at once.
Here's the thing. I am not saying, like I said, I believe that at the time, like they made the first basically big 3D platformer. I'm not knocking them for that. I think they did what they could do at the time, right? I'm not saying that for the time period it's bad, but they re-released it now and it's still bad.
Yeah, without fixing anything.
Without fixing anything. They were just like, here, pay me $60 or however much it was for the 3 games together, and you gave me a game with bad controls. You gave me, in my opinion, the best Mario game of all time, Super Mario Sunshine, and then, you know, Super Mario Galaxy. But it could have fixed the controls in Mario 64.
Yeah, like I don't even want like a remaster. I just want
just
the control.
Want a camera that works and controls that aren't so sensitive. You know, an explosion of a star all the way on the other side of the universe causes me to jump to my death. That's it. That's all I'm asking for.
Can I ask a question from the perspective of someone who knows nothing about this? So there was a game, a port that came out in the DS or 3DS that you could play basically the same game as Yoshi and Mario and someone else. Could have been Luigi, could have been literally anyone. I don't remember. I'm so sorry if that was you, Luigi. I love you. You're my favorite of the Mario brothers. Anyway, regardless, was that port like a better version of the game? Like, was it praised for being like, for having better controls and better camera and all that stuff? Because I asked that because when they re-released the collection thingy, people were saying like, why didn't they use the 3DS version? And so I'm asking myself and you all now, like, was that version better and they just chose to go back to the old version for some reason?
I never actually played the 3DS version, but I have heard similar things that like that one does have a better controls.
Yeah, I never played the DS version.
I played that one. The control, it depends. Like, I personally was not fond of using the D-pad over an analog stick, so I didn't like that as much.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
Like, it was very weird. Control wise, I don't remember how the cameras handled. But as for the look of it, I think it's a hit and miss. In some ways, it looks better, and in some ways, it kind of doesn't. Like the Nintendo 64 version, kind of, I don't want to say cleanish. Like they use like more updated models and whatnot, but some of them to me just did not look as good in certain spaces. But it wasn't a bad port. Like I played it, but unfortunately the D-pad I'm sorry, I don't care what they would have fixed. I personally would have played it with the analog over a D-pad any day. It wasn't very well to me for like trying to move them around, and I ended up like falling off ledges.
Oh.
Yeah. That makes sense.
I'm feeling all these struggles from having played Banjo-Kazooie, and I'm like, it's basically the same experience. Like unreasonable platforms that you have to, or like little tiny like the littlest places that you like bridges, and you're like, oh, if you fall you're gonna die immediately because there's lava at the bottom, and you're like, oh, the camera and the controls are not helping in any way, shape, or form.
You're just like, okay, everybody shut up, nobody breathe. I gotta go across the sledge.
Any sound waves will impact my gameplay.
I truly don't understand, like, because every 3D platformer of that generation was the same. Like just a camera that didn't work and controls that were so sensitive that you could literally do nothing in the game. It's just
right.
Like, why? Why did you make games like this?
They really tried. And at the time, everybody was screaming. I remember even, like, not to go back to Sonic too much, but Sonic Adventure was the first 3D Sonic game. Well, you know, there was Sonic 3D, But that one was like, whoa, a new console. Oh no, like there's voice acting, there's all of this. And going back as an adult, I see all the issues in it. And I'm like, ooh, why did I play this? How did I enjoy this? So yeah.
Yeah.
The lip flaps were the best.
Oh, they were a journey. They were a journey. I kind of love it though. Like I love how like they don't match at all. It was just like, oh,
It's
an attempt was
bad.
made.
Yeah, they're bad, but it's hilarious to watch. It's like a big over exaggeration of trying to make it look like what they're saying.
Yes, it's absolutely that. Should we move on to our next story before we get caught up in nostalgia and criticizing all the ports that we are not happy with?
Yeah, let's get into it. We had a couple more stories to get through. So Oscar Isaac cast as Solid Snake in the new upcoming Metal Gear Solid movie. So in a write-up from PC Gamer, Hollywood-focused outlet Deadline has a scoop on Sony's long in development Metal Gear Solid movie, reporting from its sources that Oscar Isaac has been cast as protagonist Solid Snake. And it turns out Isaac's been angling hard for this role for some time. Speaking to Eurogamer back in 2017, director Jordan Boyd Roberts, gonna go with that, said it's not a direct adaptation of any particular game. It sounds too much like a modern statement to call it a remix, because that's not what it is. But it's trying to fuse a couple of different storylines together, and it all ties together with the device I can't really talk about right now, but that I'm really excited about. I think it's going to make a movie where people go, whoa, I've not seen that before. And that's very cool. And I think it's a very Kojima, it's very Kojima in its approach. So, one, how do you guys feel about Oscar Isaac playing Solid Snake if you've ever played a Metal Gear Solid game? And are you a fan of the Metal Gear Solid series? We'll start with you, Koga. What do you think?
I'm not sure about him playing as the movie. I guess I'm not sure because I wasn't aware about this until maybe a few hours ago. I mean, if he can make it work, sure. I said when it comes to video game movies, I'm very kind of not sure. We'll see. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but it's like, are you going to be able to cram this big story that how they do it into a movie? Because if they were to do, because these stories to these games are long. Like Metal Gear Solid 4 cutscenes were long. I ate an entire meal during the last cutscene.
Yeah.
As for the Metal Gear Solid series, well, Metal Gear series in general, I do like them. I loved 4 because it let me play whatever way I wanted. I'm not the biggest fan of stealth. I could do it, and I did after a certain point, and now if you leveled up, you can just run in and just shoot people if you wanted to do that. It's all right, look, I don't feel like hiding and all that. I'm going to go in this one spot and shoot you all and then just get it done. You could literally do that, and I did like the freedom that you were able to do that. 5, I never finished. I kind of got bored constantly going to one area, then you get done, then you go back into your base, then you go back to the same area. It started off really strong, and then it just got a little bit boring for me. But as for this movie, I'll give it a shot. But I mean, because I know Kojima, he's very fond of movies. So I would hope that he has something to do with this. I hope. If I see him have anything to do with it, I will have high hopes. High in the sky hopes.
I don't think he will. I don't think they'll let him touch it, to be honest with you. The falling out they had, Kojima didn't use that game from anything to do with Metal Gear Solid, even though that was your baby.
Yeah, that was pretty. But how you feel about it, Ruby? Are you on board with the movie?
I'm very neutral about this. I didn't necessarily I not necessarily I didn't at all play the Metal Gear series in any way, shape, or form. Um, I remember my brother playing them, and I remember him being stuck in a boss fight that needed, and he was like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. And turns out he needed to change either like the memory card from port 1 to port 2, or like one of or the controller, something along those lines. And I remember thinking that was so silly, but also we were both like mind blown, like, oh, it can tell which ports we're on. Oh my god, it was very that. It was like, oh my god, technology, so no, but other than that, I'm not a stealthy kind of person. I'm really bad at like that kind of approach in video games. I think a few of the original like Metal Gear Solid games are on PC now. They ported them officially, so I would be willing to give them a try, just for the sake of like trying out a classic and seeing how I feel about it. But as far as the movie, I'm just not really sure how it's gonna go. I mean, Oscar is a very when I saw the headline, I was like, yeah, he looks like he could play that character. It seems very fitting, and he's also very good looking, so that doesn't hurt either. But yeah, I would probably there's a bigger likelihood that I'll watch the movie and then see what I think about it, than for me to like invest hours and hours within the games. Because by the time there's like 5 or 6 games, I'm like, oh, it's overwhelming to take upon, like,
move on.
Yeah, sometimes it's just like, oh, maybe I just missed that train entirely, and I'm just not gonna get into that series because there's way too much to catch up on. You know what I mean? So yeah, what do you think, Spin?
Yeah, I think definitely like making a movie specifically out of like inspired by the Metal Gear series is a really interesting concept, because they are so cinematic and because they're known for having like really intricate cutscenes. And like I've seen people do like compilations where they just string all the cutscenes together and make their own movies, basically. So I feel like it is a video game that lends itself well to more so to being a movie than a lot of video games that are made into movies do. So I think it's a really interesting concept. Personally, I haven't played any of the games. I'm just not a stealthy girly. I'm more of a like run up and shoot while screaming kind of girly.
Same. Oh, I was supposed to hide?
Oh. Spin runs in, move, I'm gay.
Yeah, move, I'm gay. Y'all should have seen me playing, because I played through all of BioShock Infinite, and I literally just like spammed the machine gun the entire time. I was just running, shooting, yelling the entire time.
Oh.
Just fully move, I'm gay. I got places to go.
I love that. I did that too when I played it. That's so funny. Like, I was like, maybe I should be careful. But then I was like, that lasted like 2 minutes, and I started shooting, and then everybody else started shooting, which led to me not wanting to hide anymore and be like, you know what, y'all want to fight? Let's fight. And then I died. So, and then I didn't go back to the game ever.
It's very that. Hey, I feel like that's a valid strategy. I did complete the entire game that way.
There you go.
Love that.
But with the casting choice, I do see it. Yeah. Like I see it. I feel like this makes sense, and I might be interested to see the movie. I mean, when it does eventually come out, I know it's been delayed for a really long time, and they're currently not like. It's very in like the pre-production stages because of COVID, and they've only just like announced this casting after like 2 years of it being in development. So hopefully this means that they're going somewhere with it and it will eventually happen, but it's definitely kind of an up in the air thing. Definitely. And with that, we can kind of get into just a discussion. This isn't really like necessarily connected to like a news story, we just kind of wanted to get into like a discussion about Cyberpunk 2077. I know we've talked a lot about some of the issues with the game, but since it is coming out very soon, we can just kind of like wrap it up and just have like a final discussion about it. I want to say. So you want to go into that?
Yeah, it's as Cyberpunk 2077's release approaches, there's obviously more and more discussions about the ethics of playing that game, of the themes surrounding the game, the discussions around it, and people being like, oh, I'm not going to play it. And some people being like, why? I didn't know there was anything wrong with the game. And even though you could argue that these discussions have been happening for a while. And then there's the aspect of potential performative support. And people at first being like, "Oh, this game, I can't do it," and then as the release date approaches, them being like, "Oh, but it is a very popular game, so I may still live stream it because I'm gonna get more viewers." But basically, we kind of discussed whether or not we wanted to talk about it again because we briefly mentioned some issues with Cyberpunk in previous episodes of the show. So, but it felt like at the end of the day, since the game is coming out, we wanted to address it in like a final way and just state our thoughts about it, go a little bit more in depth about the issues that are within the game, the studio, etc. So I actually found this thread from Resetera. So it basically encompasses a lot of the issues that are surrounding this entire situation. So obviously we can start with some contextual stuff. So when it comes to their tweets, and this is from the Cyberpunk 2077 account, it traces back to 2018, and there was a situation where someone quote tweeted Cyberpunk, and they replied to it by asking, "Did you just assume their gender?" And obviously it was the first of many controversies over the span of the last couple years. And while it may not seem as though that line is like transphobic or incredibly offensive, it actually stems from the mocking of outrage culture and how several alt-right people have this idea of like trans people are overly sensitive and they just respond like anything. It's like, oh, everybody just says like, oh, did you just assume my gender? Did you just assume their gender? When it's a thing that literally, as a non-binary person, I know so many trans people and I've never heard one person say this seriously. So it stems from that mockery of like, oh, assuming the gender, don't assume it. Like, even I see people do this all the time with like, don't assume the gender of the robot in this game. Don't assume, you know what I mean? Like, people kind of, they don't probably know where the joke kind of comes from, but it comes from, mockery of the trans community and reactions to misgendering. So they apologized for it at the time, and then due to that apology, the alt-right fan base of that game, basically spammed them with like calling them social justice warrior clowns and just spamming with a lot of stuff along those lines. Back in 2018 as well, CD Projekt Red's online storefront GOG.com posted a tweet using the hashtag won't be erased to promote classic video games. And that hashtag at the time was being used due to a Trump administration memo that proposed a strict definition of gender based on a person's genitalia at birth. So obviously that would cause for trans individuals and trans identities to be erased. So that's why the hashtag won't be erased even came to fruition. And obviously there was an outcry of responses to it and criticisms, and apparently they fired the person involved. So again, this was 2018. People may think it was 2 years ago. They are okay. They addressed those things. They fired or, reprimanded the people involved. What's wrong with the game? So let's go to 2019, last year, June 2019. And there was a gameplay reveal of the game. And one of the posters, or several posters in game, featured what is basically a fetishized caricature of a trans woman. You can see a visible boner in the photo, and it's supposed to present like this fizzy drink with the phrase "mix it up." So the idea, obviously, if people don't understand why this is wrong, it's basically fetishizing a trans woman's body and highlighting the transness of her, if you will, and reducing people down to their genitals and making a whole ordeal about their existence and about their transness rather than normalizing them and properly representing them. So then, obviously this also got criticized. They got out of it by saying that the person is sexy and it's supposed to be about, it's supposed to represent the hypersexualization in advertisements in the real world, yada, yada, yada. There were also, so they ended up not removing that at all, and there are other posters along those lines in the game as far as we know. Obviously the game isn't out yet, but from what they've showed, that brand of fizzy drinks still exists in game. They also had an advertisement that implied that a trans individual was a sex worker, which obviously plays into the stereotype that trans women are, like, for the most part, it's basically the stereotype that trans women are sex workers and the negative connotations that can come from that. So obviously they also did that, and they keep justifying stuff as being like, it's a dystopia, it's meant to be bad, it's meant to represent what's wrong with society, all of that stuff. And it's important for people to also understand that there is potential political bias. All of this is alleged, obviously, but the CD Projekt Red operates in Poland, and obviously there's a very complicated relationship with that country and the LGBTQIA plus community. They have LGBTQIA plus free spaces, anti-LGBTQIA plus propaganda, very intense stuff. And to that, they said that the studio has different approaches to political, religious, and spiritual and internal life, and that as a studio they cultivate openness and approach everything in a way that everyone can have a voice and represent each of these shades. So you may think, Ruby, you've been speaking for a long time. Is that it? No. I will continue to present the case because there's also a character creator, and people will be like, oh, I've heard that this is diverse. Well, think again. So the gendered options in this game, you can have a male presenting body, a female presenting body, and that doesn't determine your gender. What does determine your gender in game is apparently your voice. So if you choose to have a high-pitched voice character, your character will be referred to as she, her, and if you have a lower pitched voice, your character will be referred to as he, him. Obviously, another very sensitive topic within the trans community, because obviously it's the voice that you have doesn't represent your identity, and yeah, it seems very, very silly to even allow that. There's obviously the consequence that we touched upon of like cis people joking around with the idea like, wouldn't it be so funny to have a chick with a dick or a guy with a vagina, and how wrong that is as well, because it's also like, hey, let's not make a mockery of other people's bodies, and also their genitalia does not reflect their identity. Last but not least, there was, as far as the queer community, they had a cosplay competition. That the winner of said competition was a cisgendered female individual who cosplayed as the character from the advertisement that I was just talking about. And she even had a glowing penis. What a subtle hint that we're fetishizing transness and trans characters. So again, they went about it by saying that they didn't want to offend anyone and they wanted to show how over-sexualization of people is bad. So along that, there's also claims and proof that they actually have mandatory crunch, so mandatory overtime. We talked about this on a previous episode. Obviously, up until the game comes out, the crunch is continuing on as we speak now, because the game still hasn't come out off the time we're recording this. And they've done some other follow-up gameplay and game teasers where they showed a lot of groups in game that are very racially stereotypical, and so they also are misrepresenting people from various communities that are also not happy with how they're being represented. So I'm sorry, that was a very long introduction to the topic, but there was a lot to cover there, and so I am gonna shut up and let y'all speak for the next for the next hour, because people are tired of hearing my voice, and I'm also tired of hearing my own voice. So y'all can go on ahead. What do y'all think about this entire situation?
I can go ahead and start. From my perspective as a trans person, the argument that it's a dystopia, it's supposed to be bad, just does not really hold water when you think about the fact that these advertisements are not like provided in any kind of context that would imply that that's what you're going for. It's just in the world, and you're allowing the people who are playing the game to kind of make their own decisions about it. And when you have the attitudes of like a lot of gamers who are like, oh, this is fine, they're going to see that and they're going to think it's fine unless you provide some kind of context that it's not. But also when it's coupled with the context of some of these tweets from the official game account and from the company, it starts to look like, oh, like they have like ulterior motives kind of for doing this, because it really feels like they see trans people as a joke. And with the like, did you just assume their gender thing, like if for people who don't know, the jokes like the did you just assume my gender or I identify as an attack helicopter are like very common jokes that are made at the expense of trans and non-binary people. And this is very clearly like a reference to that kind of energy and that kind of hostility towards trans and non-binary people as a joke. So like it really feels like this company sees trans people as a joke, and it's kind of like, oh, it kind of feels like, oh, we're going to include trans bodies in this like very like overt and like sexualized way, like as a, oh, tee, that's funny. Like that's what it feels like more to me, instead of like a statement on like, oh, this is a bad thing because we're in a dystopia. That that's kind of my perspective on it. And like, I know that people have kind of made up their own opinions already on this game. I feel like there's some people who just aren't going to listen to trans people, basically. Like there's some people who have made up their minds, are like, oh, the transphobia stuff isn't a big deal. Like it's fine. It's just a few trans people overreacting, and I'm just gonna play the game anyway. And like I know like the people at this point, I feel like the people who don't want to hear trans people's opinions on this issue aren't going to hear us. And but I mean there are some people who like genuinely don't know, and that's kind of what we're doing this for in a way. So let me go ahead and hand it over to Jam to kind of see what you think about some of this. I definitely want to get y'all's perspective.
I would have to agree. Like the issue here is that it's the joking, it's the mockery, it's the it's the complete disregard for a portion of the community for me, honestly. Like at some point, why is it that you have people say, oh, I want this, I want this, I want this, or oh, this is something that I want to be a part of this whole of this game or of this experience, and you say, okay, let's listen to what these people have to say. And then when you have a specific group of people who are saying, hey, this one specific thing that you did is problematic, and I would like you to change this. I'm not asking you to change the whole game. I'm asking you to change this and acknowledge that this is a problem. And if you're, as many people here may know, I will stand on a soapbox about my problems with in-stage capitalism, and I'm for a game that will criticize the fact that it's problematic and those types of things. Like, I'm for that, but using that as a crutch for, well, the society is bad, so this is just a part of that society, is lazy. It's falling back on things that you don't have to use. Like, you can do this and you can make that commentary without doing this. And the other big thing, which Ruin Crown mentioned in our chat here on our stream on Twitch, is that, like, why was no one in the room when this conversation was happening? Like, if you're saying that you hold yourself to a different standard than the country that you're in and those types of things, why is it that you don't have people in the room when it comes to this type of thing? And yes, it may not be that that person is offended by this, but that person is probably in more contact with people who would respond to this and say, okay, people will probably be offended by something like this. Maybe it doesn't affect me because either they're like, well, I get the joke because I work here and I understand what this is meant to be, but other people are offended because they don't see what's coming from this, and this isn't in any kind of context. So they're just not, and I don't understand, like, why is it in 2020 we're still having to have conversations about the fact that if you don't have people in the room, this continues to happen. Like, we've said it about a number of companies, right? Like, over and over again, it's like, this was something that could have easily been avoided if you just had diversity in your group, and again, not everyone's going to have the same opinion, but those people have different voices that you're not hearing that they're hearing, and they can provide a perspective. And I just don't get it. I don't understand. And to the conversation of people who potentially are still like, oh, I feel weird about this, I'm not going to play the game, but then now we're like, well, I'm still going to play it. Hold that same energy that you held when, J.K. Rowling was, being a TERF, and now you're like, I'm not going to play the Hogwarts games anymore. Is it like, do the same thing here? Like, just because you were excited about this game, and I get it. Like, I'm not going to stop being friends with somebody because they play a game, probably, but at least be willing to actually continue to overtly criticize it if you were critical of it before. And I don't know. I could go on and on and on about how this is problematic, because this is just like, it's just clear in 2020 that, transphobia, homophobia, just LGBTQIA plus, like, hatred and racism and all of that is just like at an all-time overt high right now, and it's just like I just don't understand. Like, how have we gone back to this? Like, why are we here? Why are we not still progressing forward? But I'll stop before I get on the soapbox about other things. Like, but how do you feel, Koga? What do you have to say about it?
Definitely does feel like they should have had more people in the room who were a part of the community so they can have multiple perspectives, because it doesn't feel like they do. So then they're advertising the game, and we have to go off of certain things without much context. So it doesn't really, it makes it hard to see, like, where are they coming from. And it doesn't help that they have issues, previously, like with, I know it was like 2018, they had the issue with, on Twitter. I know that they said that they, that the person who was, I guess, doing that, he was fired. But I mean, people will still, look at that. And also, if there's ongoing issues, and there has been since, whether it be through social media or, the games and things like that. So it for me, it gets to a point where it's like, I don't plan on getting it right now because I don't know, like, how they plan on going about this. So it's like, for me, I have to wait, watch, see how the community, reacts, and then, see from there. Because I do know a few who are part of the trans community who don't have the same opinion as a lot of people on it. And for me, who's not trans, I do have to take that into account as well, because I can't tell them that, how they feel is wrong. I can't do that. So at the same time, I also listen to those who have an issue with it and, try to speak with them to get where they're coming from as well. And, both have valid points, but it really just feels like they didn't have many of the community in the room, and it's just causing a big issue. And I remember we were talking about this before, is that you have to make sure you have those people, who represent the community in the room, to get, multiple perspectives so you can better handle the situation. Because right now you have people who are feeling, upset and like they may made fun of, and that's not something you want to do. And that may not be your intention, but where's the context? We won't know until the game is out. And by then, it may not even be worth it, because then they will have to have the game spoiled to get the context. So for me, I wish they would have just handled this entire thing better. I can't say I was ever completely hyped about it. I mean, the game looks nice, but I have a backlog of games anyway, so it's like missing it isn't something that bothers me. As for content creators who are talking about they may want to look, what you're gonna do. Don't waste my time with this nonsense on Twitter. You know what you want to do. If you're going to do it, don't give me no BS excuse. Fine, I get it. Go do it. But at the same time, as Jam said, you're gonna have to keep that same energy when it comes to these other titles as well. But we know people don't do that. So that's pretty much where I stand right now. I'm just gonna keep listening to the community, wait, and see how, when the game does come out and how people have played it, and then listen to the community, again, and see what did they do.
Yeah. It definitely doesn't come as surprising to see people glorifying a product that harms the trans community, because unfortunately our community just doesn't listen to the T in LGBT
Not at all.
very often. So it's less surprising when it comes from, like, cis hetero folks that are clueless about these issues, and they often don't listen to or don't read anything unless it's on like a big news like publication or anything of the sort. So they're not actively looking to these threads to to look into the issues that target the queer community, the POC community. It's just not surprising. It is disappointing when it comes from within the queer community, when it's like, oh, a couple trans people told me it's okay to stream it, so I'm gonna stream it. Or, a couple of people I spoke to were fine with it, so it's fine. I'm fine with it. Or when a cis person, and I'm just going to say that because I could be talking about gay people, I could be talking about straight people, it doesn't really matter. Non-trans people will often as well, especially if they're a part of the queer community, they will be like, oh, I'm going to play it and actively criticize it. Okay, but are you actively going to like know everything that is wrong with it, because if you haven't lived it, or if you haven't experienced it, or if you don't have like a person with you that is trans, like in a voice chat with you or in person with you, that will actively commentate alongside you? Or are you just going to stream it, hope it's not offensive, or hope that your community will actively tell you if it's right or wrong? Also, another thing that is interesting is, and we were talking about this while we were setting up to do the show, is that when you're a content creator, sometimes, well, I would say like most times, people won't just straight up tell you like, hey, you're offending me, or hey, you're doing something wrong. Like oftentimes people just will unfollow, click out, and move on. Like the people who are maybe willing to give you a chance, they will be like, oh no, I don't see a problem with it, I'm trans and you're okay to stream it, I won't fault you for it. And so it obviously, one, that's like, a little bubble, like a little echo chamber that you should kind of avoid. Like, hey, if everyone is telling me that it's okay, let me look outside of my little bubble and see if other people think the same. Because just because the four of us, for example, say something, and if the four of us agree on something, doesn't mean that our opinions are inherently right or wrong. It's just like our opinions, and you should listen to other people's opinions and get their feedback. And also, it's like, it doesn't matter if there's 3 of us, if there's 4 of us, if there's 6 of us on the podcast, we can't actively represent the entire community with our own words and our own experiences. So me being non-binary, Spin being trans, our experiences also don't speak for everyone else's in the community. With that being said, it's like, even if it's like one person tells you that it's offensive or that it's problematic or it's triggering to them, wouldn't you listen to that person rather than the people who are like, hey, it's fine, don't worry about it, right? Wouldn't you want to protect them, especially if you claim to have a safe space or an inclusive space?
Exactly.
So that's also another thing. The only people that I will not actively side-eye playing this are people that identify within the trans umbrella, because those people I trust. First of all, I can't tell them what to do. If they're not offended by it, that's their prerogative, that's their journey, that's their opinion, doesn't matter, right? Or if I trust someone who will actively criticize it or will actively have an opinion, because they speak from a non-cis perspective. For example, a friend of mine, a fellow teammate, Sierra Mist, they're a drag performer, and they posted an entire thread about how they are very conscious of all the issues in the game, and they will actively stream the game from a non-cis perspective so that they can actually provide commentary. And they also said they will actively pull the plug on it if they see that it's too much, if they see that it's triggering people, including themselves, if it's not okay at all. So I think I don't want to tell anyone, and I'm not telling anyone what to do with their lives, but don't be surprised that if you're a non-trans person who decides to make content out of this or publicly praise this, or the Harry Potter game coming out, in God knows when, that people will not either want to hang out with you, that people will subtweet you, that people will criticize you, because that's just the reality. I don't think, just because you're a part of the LGBTQIA plus community, I don't think you can speak for the entire community, especially if you're not a part of that particular community that is being targeted.
Agreed.
That's, it's like me as a white person being like, I'm gonna play this game that is being filled with like cultural appropriation claims, and as a white person I will criticize it. Like, I don't know, I of course know what cultural appropriation is, but I don't have the kind of education like, or the lived experience to actively commentate on something that, of course, I can commentate on problematic situations, but why would I put myself out there to do that when I could leave the room open for people who are affected by that to speak on their experience? Because it's okay. Even though social media, you're encouraged to talk about everything. Sometimes it's okay to shut up and uplift others, and let others speak, especially if they're the ones affected by a specific issue. So, with that being said, I have no intentions of playing this game, streaming this game. I will watch people that I trust to hear their opinions on it, because it is also important for trans people to commentate on the game, because those perspectives need to be had and they need to be heard, and obviously they will not be had or heard if no trans folks out there pick up the game, right? So either if they get a review copy or if they purchase it, I will never point a finger at any trans individual for playing this game, because it is necessary for the commentary to be out there. And I will side-eye you if you're a non-trans person. That's it. That's all.
Yeah, I definitely have like a very similar perspective to that. Like I'm grateful to the trans people who are like strong enough to see that and do that commentary, but it could not be me.
Right.
But I am really grateful to the trans people who do decide to play the game and for the purposes of commentating on these issues.
Yeah.
I also I know I don't want us to like run too long about this, but I did want to like take a minute to talk about some of the racial stereotyping, because the whole it's a dystopia, it's supposed to be bad argument really does not hold water when we talk about this. There was a trailer recently, and I did link this article in our Twitch chat. There was a trailer recently depicting some of the gangs in Night City, the city in the game, and they're basically all just racial stereotypes.
Yeah.
There's like a Hispanic gang,
an Asian gang. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's completely like irrespective of the huge variety of cultures that are within all of those communities.
Yeah.
And just like mashing them all together into like this stereotypical amalgamation of just boiling like people of these races down to like one thing.
Yeah.
And this is a gang that is one of your adversaries in this game.
Yeah.
And it's not with I would love it if there was a Cyberpunk game that was critical of end stage capitalism, that was a critique of end stage capitalism and showed like this is what's going to happen if we keep going on this current trajectory. But the whole it's a dystopia, it's supposed to be bad argument completely doesn't even apply to this, because it's not advertisements in the game. It's not part of that critique of end stage capitalism. This is just fully perpetuating stereotypes at this point. So do y'all have any thoughts on that, and you want to kind of go into that? If you start us
off. I just looked at because I kind of like gave up on this game a while ago. Like I was very excited for it when it was originally announced. And then eventually I kind of gave up on it because I was just like, this game's never coming out. And then as more and more problematic things came out, I was like, well, I was already over it. So now I'm like really over it. And I hadn't, because I'd stopped paying so much attention to the game, I hadn't really looked at any of this stuff. The name of these gangs.
Right.
Like the only one, and then granted, I am not Latino. I'm not a member of the Hispanic community. So I can't identify with this being how bad this is. You know, their name is probably the only one that is, and it's still, I think, problematic. It's probably the least problematic of the three. But like having a group called Tiger Claws, the Voodoo Boys, like it's just like, who was there? I think
Right.
this is the same question. Like, who did you consult? Like, why is this where you've gone with this? And it's just like, and I get that, like, the whole point of the game and how it's this dystopian society is meant to basically be that, like, capitalism and like corporations took over the world and there was really no more government. It was basically money ran everything, right? And but it's just, I don't, this makes
With the
me
messaging of it,
this makes
like,
me very mad, like, to a degree that just it really just pisses me off to such a degree that, like, it hurts, because I just don't understand. I just don't get why.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Yeah. I didn't want to interrupt, but like what I was saying is with the messaging of it, it's like this. You're not saying that this is how this society sees these people, because you're not doing. You're not. There's even the thin argument of, oh, this is how the corporations see these people, doesn't hold water
Right.
on this topic. It's very clearly, this is how we see these people.
Yeah.
This is what we as white people making this game think of these people from these cultures. And it's really disgusting, in my opinion.
That's how it comes across to me with the trans content and with the racial stereotyping. It comes across as like they are in this weird little like middle line where they're like, we can claim this is representation, but also if it goes badly, like we can also say it's commentary on how bad things are. And you can't just sit in the middle and expect compliments for inclusion and also for that, and try to justify one with the other, right? This to me just seems like a group of cis-het white folks were like, this is how LGBT people are, this is how Asian people are, this is how black people are, and you're like, I no, that's not at all.
Yeah.
That's not at all how it is. But yeah, go ahead, Koga. I've spoken way too much about this.
Oh, you're fine. Yeah, so I haven't seen this trailer yet, but yeah, I have to agree that it feels like there was just no representation in this room. And then I'm looking at here. But they picked Hispanic Heritage Month for one of them, and what's even happening here? Like,
yeah.
this is just bad, and it's like
Yeah.
it's like a part of me kind of like would want to believe that they're like maybe have like not trying to be offensive, or but it's like you're doing too much in a row. Like, I wasn't even aware of this because, like, Jim, I stopped paying as much attention to it because every time I turned around, it was another issue or it got delayed. So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. Voodoo Boys.
It just makes no sense. It's just like, it's like the imagery that you have in the group of Latino people, because it's not even referring to Spanish people, right? It's specifically referring to like the Americanized version of a Hispanic person, like in terms of like the idea of like them being gang members and this type. It's just so on the nose, racist and stereotypical. I just don't get it.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
I don't understand how a game that is meant to be a commentary on society doesn't speak to anyone at all while making a commentary, because I think it would be one thing if they led with the idea of let's say if they were like, if they had a message for why stereotyping people is bad, and then they showed these people and they were like, this is not okay, this is like corporate bullshit and we need to tear it down. But they usually lead with like happy like happy Hispanic appreciation month, and they're like, look at this cool gang that you're gonna find in game, and you're like, ooh, no, 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 no. Like, it's not okay at all. And it's just, it really bothers me because, like Spin said, it's like the audience that they're targeting towards is gonna be like, oh look, they have all kinds of backgrounds in this game. They have so much diversity in this game, without even realizing that they're looking at stereotypes and they're not looking at actual people and actual representation of any culture. So that's why these conversations need to happen, and that's why people need to listen to the conversations, not just
Yeah.
watch them happen on your timeline and don't pay attention to it because you're gonna play the game anyway. Because there's just so many deep-rooted issues within the game, within the development of the game. But if we're gonna keep it about the game only, it's like, how does anyone in 2020 claim to be quote-unquote woke or an ally to any community out there, and then actively be excited for a game like this, or actively be excited to show this, or to be like, oh, I'm gonna criticize it. Okay, you're one person. How are you gonna criticize their misrepresentation of the Latinx community, the Asian community, the Black community, the trans community? How are you gonna, as one individual, how are you gonna commentate on that? You're not. You're gonna get distracted by the flashing lights, the neon signs, the cool car, Keanu Reeves. You're gonna be excited about all that stuff. You're not gonna provide commentary on any of that, unless, like I said, you're a part of one of the groups that are targeted by this game. And in that, with that being said, if you're a part of that and you provide commentary, we appreciate you and we thank you for potentially enduring triggering content and stuff that will not be good for you, for the sake of you trying to help out the community and or the multiple communities affected by this game. And yeah, those are like my closing thoughts. Like, thank you for everyone who is a part of the commentary and who is trying to have conversations for games in the future to not have this kind of misrepresentation.
Yeah, it's just I think the last thing I have to say about it is just like it's like the idea of using, and like I said again, the only one I can speak to specifically, as I am a member of the Black community, is like the use of of voodoo as the name is just so like triggering, in the fact that like voodoo as a practice is inherently not bad. Like it is a practice that people have been a part of for a very long period of time, but it gets associated with being dark and evil and problematic and all of these things, specifically because of its association with Black people. And the fact that you decided to name the gang the Voodoo Boys like further ties the idea that voodoo is inherently bad and that Black people are inherently involved in gang culture. And it's just like, why? Yeah. Why? And yeah, that's it.
That one I don't even know how that became a thing. And like I said, if their whole excuse is, them, using the game, I guess, was it to fight against things like this? Like, you're gonna have to really somehow in the game show how you're doing that to make people think of that differently, because it's like with this one, it's like you're just digging yourself deeper into a hole that you are already pretty deep into.
Yeah.
I
don't know. Like I said, as of right now, I don't intend to. I'm going to wait till it comes out, see what happens, but right now it doesn't really looking like I'll probably be giving them my money for this at the moment.
No.
Exactly. I think just in closing, I feel like hopefully we change some hearts and minds.
Yeah.
Just thank everybody. I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank all y'all watching, all of my lovely co-hosts for participating in this, because it is a hard discussion to have, but I think it's definitely important. So just thanks everybody for being here and participating in this with us.
Yeah, for sure. And before we go, obviously, where can people find each and every one of us so they can shower us with love and support? We can start with Jam.
You can find me everywhere: Twitter, Instagram, and Twitch at jam_5899. If you come over to the Twitch channel, we read scientific papers, we talk about vaccines, we play Cuphead, we do it all. We talk about things like this. I stand on a soapbox and talk about how I'm not a communist and I hate end-stage capitalism. Come hang out, be a girly in the chat. We love you. We're an inclusive community, and sometimes we might play, Dead by Daylight on stream and be a girly put in a box.
Yeah, it happens more often than you would think.
Girlies in a box?
Who would have thought? What about you, Koga?
You can find me, of course, on Twitter at Koga_Jangles, and same here, which would be twitch.tv/Koga_Jangles. I have to think about that all the time. I think putting the underscore there might have been a mistake.
Oh, listen, you have to do what you got to do.
Yeah. So tomorrow, I'll be back for Sega Saturn Sunday. I didn't get to do that last Sunday because I was meeting up with my mom. Usually for what that is, we just play some Sega Saturn games, some that I've played, some that I haven't played, and I probably might start playing Virtual On tomorrow. I know that was like some kind of mech game. I didn't have the full game as a kid. I had like the demo. So then throughout the week, if my job doesn't like mentally exhaust me from being on the phone, I haven't decided what I'll be playing yet, so I'll probably be just playing some random things throughout the week.
Sounds good. Sounds wonderful. You can find me everywhere. projectruby.eu. You can find my links to my Twitter, to my YouTube, to my Twitch. If I happen to be live, you'll be able to see it there because it's all embedded. If you want to work with me, there's also all my contacts in there. So I started recently Final Fantasy VII Remake. I'm also starting a new game that's viewer voted. So that's going to be a fun mystery to find out tomorrow off of the time that we're recording this show. And Banjo-Kazooie is also happening. So I do a mixture of modern retro games, podcasting like this. I have my own podcast coming back very soon. You can expect clownery, you can expect serious conversations, you can expect a little bit of everything. That's it me. What about you, Spin?
I am Spinblend. You can find me on Twitch or Twitter under Spinblend. I've been talking about this literally like every week on this podcast.
Yes,
but
you
we
have.
finally found our shiny Pumpkaboo, and he's beautiful, and I love him, and he is my perfect pumpkin son.
Reaction on Twitter.
I did post the reaction on Twitter if y'all want to see that. Now we are on a quest for a shiny Phantom, so y'all can see that on my Twitch channel this week. Hopefully also making some progress in Mario 64. Just like pray for me.
Yes.
And I also do make soap, and I have a soap shop on Etsy. It's been Soap Cafe. You can find that on Instagram as well.
Yes, wonderful.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Yeah, and of course, Chalora is not here, but you can find her on Twitch at Chalora, on Twitter, Chalora with a 0 instead of an O, and Chalora Flora on Instagram. So we are live every Saturday for our podcast, sometime midweek, sometimes Wednesdays, sometimes Thursdays. We do gaming streams on Twitch as well. So last week, Spin and Chalora did a Sackboy Adventure stream, and it was wonderful. So yeah, please follow us on Twitch and Twitter at Just Gaming Tingz with a Z. Look up Just Gaming Tingz Podcast on your favorite podcast services. So follow us on there as well, so you can, get us up there in the algorithm so that more people can watch and listen to these wonderful conversations that we're having every week. We'll see you next week. Thank you, everybody. Again, thank you for these wonderful co-hosts for this conversation. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will talk to you soon. Stay safe, everybody. Bye.
Love you guys. Bye.
Love ya.